Hello and welcome back to Let's Play Alundra. Welcome to the first dungeon, Tarn's Manor, the ancestral home apparently of Septimus's apprentice. And immediately, final boss? No, we just come head to head or face to glowing eyeballs with the villain for a minute. I think that was a diss. Leads us into an opportunity to get revenge on those monkeys who attacked us and did apparently no damage to our actual health right outside the manor. Merg are the weakest enemies in the game. They take exactly 2 hits from the pathetic little sword that we start the game out with. And they have no attacks but to jump at us. The jump, of course, is frustratingly just slightly larger than the diameter of Alundra's swing, meaning when they jump over you, you can't just turn around and hit them. You actually have to slowly learn how far you can move without walking into them while still remaining in your sword range, but not too difficult to figure out. They only do 1 point of damage for every strike, and of course we start with 10 hit points. So we have a little margin for error here. Of course, I got no health pickups from those boxes, which is frustrating unto itself. This is a strength tonic, our first expendable item. It's useful for a brief strength boost. I don't typically get into the habit of using those. Nope, wrong way. Come on, go down in the other door, the one that just unlocked. Yes, thank you. I don't typically use the strength tonics just because it's not something I like to get into the habit of using. You know, I like to get the hang of how long it takes to kill a given enemy with my default weapon. Anyway, there we go. We get a little bit of a health pickup there. This is similar to, you know, the early dungeons in Zelda where the dungeon isn't very difficult, the enemies don't do very much damage, but you have so little health that you have very little margin for error in general, and it gets a little rough if you take a couple of hits and the, you know, destructible items like these boxes don't drop health, but of course now we're at full, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's another slime suit, and rock traps. Probably forgot about that. I was supposed to dash into those, but I totally forgot I had a dash move because this game derives so heavily from Zelda that it shocks me when certain things are different, like the fact that we have access to that dash move from the get-go as opposed to having to pick up boots or something. Yeah, otherwise, in general, the various spike traps in this dungeon are very easy to pick out. The only pain is when you can't see the ball hanging from wherever it's supposed to be hanging from. It's like Spider-Man. Just hangs from the ether, I guess. No reason to kill these guys, but might as well do it anyway to top off my health, possibly, if they'll drop anything, and pick up some extra guilders, because we do need to get to 500 for a trip to a shop in the near future. Let's take care of that. Dash. See, now that I remember I have a dash, you use it to get everywhere. It's awesome. Nothing too much to talk about in the dungeon itself. It's pretty standard. Pick up an item, drop it on the switch, kill the enemies. If you've ever played a Zelda game before, you know exactly what we have to do, and if you haven't, it's not too difficult to figure it out from just observing the items that you've been given in the course of the game itself going through the room. This, of course, is the standard increase in multiplicity from the previous room. In the last room we only had 1 barrel to work with, and now we have 4 and 4 switches, so let's just go take care of that. This is, in fact, a puzzle where you have to have all the switches held down, so you can't just move 3 barrels and stand on the 4th switch. You have to go through the trouble of going down and getting the 4th switch yourself. Of course, I guess I forgot a slime there. Let's go take care of you. Out of my way, thank you. Hey, 5 coins. That's a 10th of our allowance, apparently, for this at this point. And that's an herb, of course, our expendable health pickup. Now, there's a spike ball, but who cares? Yeah, there's one there too. And this treasure chest is a Gilded Falcon, the game's arbitrary, otherwise meaningless collectible that will be turning in for important unlockables that turn out to be game-breakingly powerful. But more on that later. We've got 1 now, and there's obviously, as you can imagine, quite a few of those. Slimes. I really, really wish these guys didn't take 5 hits to kill. There's no reason for them to be that durable, especially when the Merg only take 2 hits. I guess they're supposed to be counterpoints to each other, where the Merg are fast and fragile, and the Slimes are durable but slow and stupid. Realistically, neither of them are particularly threatening. So get these guys out of the way, just so they don't bother me later. Kind of a slight modification of the switch puzzle. You can only keep 1 door open at a time. There's no reason for this to be here, but I guess I can't argue with it too much. There we go. And of course, I'll go right, and by right I mean turn back around and go back into the room, because as we all know, when you have to make a binary decision in a video game, where one path leads you further on, the other path leads you to optional treasure, you will always make the wrong decision first. Go in this little hole. What's this here for? It's to avoid the spiked ball. Which ball? That ball. Right, which I probably should have dodged. Another herb. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Right, that ball comes back. Dick move, game. Thanks a lot. Anyway, it's a recurring theme in this particular dungeon. Or I should say in this particular test run of this dungeon that I got hit with the balls a lot. But as the enemies are non-threatening, we actually get a free health refill pretty soon. I'm not too worried about it. I think I can take 5 more hits. Yeah, everything does 1 point of damage in this dungeon. I have to admit, the perspective makes it really hard to figure out if there hadn't been a little thing on the floor where those balls are supposed to fall, but I guess... Ow. Dang it. Health refill, coming soon. Health refill. Sigh. Oh, come on, that one didn't even reach me. Why does that one not hit the side wall? Alright, that did absolutely nothing. Oh, okay, there we go. A key. For some reason, those 4 switches not only give you the key, but also unlock the ladder to move upwards. I'm not really sure why they needed to block our path twice. Anyway, here we go. Open this treasure chest and we get a life vessel. This is the game's heart container, basically. There are no pieces of heart in this game. You just have a very large life meter. I believe it maxes out at 50. Something the game stole from basically the Landstalker style of games, where as opposed to getting a small handful of heart containers at the end of dungeons or from assembling pieces of heart, you just get a lot of points. Let's go left, and by left I mean right, because of course I made the wrong binary decision again. To the right is another herb. This is what I was talking about in the sense that you max out on herbs very quickly if you've been venturing outside the primary town. Let's go back to the left. I'd like to think that these Merg are supposed to be hiding or something. It's like the exact opposite of that thing in 2D RPGs where there's a secret passage hidden in a wall that should be incredibly obvious to the hero but invisible to the player. Yeah, this is the opposite of that. Anyway, final room of the dungeon. That wasn't too hard, was it? Here we go. The Book of Elna, a book about ourselves, which we apparently need to give back to Septimus so he can tell us about us. You would think that Alundra would know about his Dreamwalker powers if you take into consideration the fact that he had a prophetic dream that led him here in the first place, but I guess that's expecting a bit too much. Alright, what do you have to say? For a guy who's surprisingly hands-on as final villains go, or is supposed to be sealed, he doesn't really have a lot to say or do. He's just pissing us off, trolling us, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, we do have to walk out here, and yes, these guys are back. See? Perspective. Wonderful. I hate this game sometimes. Come on, one more piece of health. It always makes me slightly uncomfortable not having a maxed out health meter. Nothing left to do here, but walk back to Anoa Village and try to save Wendell. I suppose it's an interesting sort of comparison you can make between this game and Dual Hearts, wherein the villain in Dual Hearts predominantly just simply preyed on the insecurities of other people, and that most of our objectives in those games revolved around solving problems in their personal lives. Mel's actually takes an active hand in corrupting the individual villagers. Let's, very briefly show this. This is actually the restart screen to the game. I took a minute to save and come back. This is actually how you load the game. It's like this unbelievably hardcore scene about having significant conviction to return to the adventure. Just thought I'd show that off once, since I typically don't really show save and restore screens in my Let's Plays thus far. Now that we've done that, let's leave Jess's house and go say hi to Wendell. Of course, as you can imagine, even though he was in substantial pain and was incredibly old and presumably decrepit, he's still hanging in there, right on the verge of death, waiting for us to pick up the Book of Elna. I suppose in this case, we didn't have a lot of opportunities to wander around and do side quests like you do in a lot of RPGs, so it's like we could pretend that we took our time. Yeah, Septimus is the only one who could help him. Right. Not us. There we go. The dialogue sort of indicates that this village sort of practices a sort of Jehovah's Witness style religion where people pray in the absence of legitimate medical care. But again, since the magic actually does exist, I feel like it's somewhat justified. It just happens to be sort of a continuing plot through the game that we'll explore a bit more later. Anyway, let's go check out his dream for the first time. This is a fairly short dungeon, so we can squeeze it in this episode as well. Pretty straightforward. Rise and fall, breathe in, breathe out. Alundra's falling asleep. It's basically teaching us how to fall asleep next to the guy, standing up. Sure. Here we are. That was fast. Loading screen, I didn't really cut anything out. This dungeon is incredibly simplistic, but in general, I find that the dreams themselves tend to represent really generic sort of puzzle environments, so... Wait, there we go. Yeah, he's being cornered by what I assume are monsters sent by Malzus, but we can take our sweet time in this particular case too. They'll still be in exactly that same position as we make our way through this single-room dungeon. The puzzle here is basically to keep hitting these switches and move the blocks out of the way. There's not too much to it. I don't believe there's only basically 1 or 2 parts in the entire dungeon where you can have a choice of paths to go on. I guess the other tricky part here is knowing that you can pass through some of those archways that obscure bridges. The game sort of actively points out the fact that its perspective is terrible. Yeah, there are exactly 2 treasure chests. They're both right here. The first one is an herb, of course. Now we have 4, which is more than we're going to need for quite a while. It's important to note that the dream dungeons in this game can never be revisited. Once you complete a dream, you can never go back into it. This is basically the primary source of items that you can lose permanently. Of course, here we have no options, nothing to do but continue to follow the path, no enemies, no nothing. Just looking for the next switch. It's, basically just a time waster. I promise the dreams do get significantly more elaborate and the puzzles get substantially more interesting as the game proceeds. But this one is just, I don't know, a waste of 5 minutes, I suppose. There's some combat later, so it gets a little bit more exciting as we move along. Okay, one more switch here, and we have the option to go back and pick up that second treasure chest. In fact, the game is nice enough to show you that the block moved out of the way so that you remember to go back and get it. This is fairly important, too, because as we'll see once I get back there, this treasure chest contains the second Gilded Falcon. And there are a ton of these you can miss in the dreams themselves. You can't miss any mission-critical items by forgetting the dreams, but you can miss a number of the Gilded Falcons, and the reward for getting all of these is absolutely unbelievable, befitting the effort it takes to get all of them. So I'll be doing my best to get that and show it to you. Alright, combat time. 8 slimes. Slimes are a threat. Yeah, no, they're not. The biggest pain in this particular part of the level is not necessarily the slimes themselves, but the puzzle that comes after it, which isn't difficult so much as it is incredibly aggravating. You're about to see. You'll notice that there are 2 paths leading off of this room, and I was just talking about making binary decisions incorrectly during the previous dungeon. Basically, there's going to be a switch that unblocks those 2 pathways, and you have to make a series of binary decisions with no clue whatsoever. I, of course, failed this many times during my test run and know exactly what the path is, because the first time I recorded this, I made the wrong decision every single time. There we go. See? Exactly as we left him. Good as new, or old. Yeah, let's pretend that we were talking in there. Or it might be more fun just to pretend that he's insane and hurt us. Saying his name in his brain. Anyway, yeah, it would be a little anticlimactic to fight 5 slimes as the boss when we just killed 8 of them, so of course they combine to a gigantic slime, which is still easier than the 8 separately. This is the Gelatinoid, the first major boss in the game. And just like the bosses in Dual Hearts, it takes way too many hits to take down for how threatening it is. Check this out, it takes something like 22 hits just to end this first phase of the boss battle. All he does is move directly at you, and be briefly invincible. Poke, poke, poke. It's important to note that Wendell is not actually in danger during this entire boss fight. The enemies will completely ignore him, and even if they touch him, they will do no damage to him. There's no way, despite the fact that the flavor of this battle is to protect Wendell, to actually have him die over the course of this scenario. Now these guys, once he splits into 4, this fight does get substantially more difficult. The balancing factor that makes it slightly easier than the first fight is that they move in a random direction, as opposed to the original version that moves directly at you. So the fight can be really easy or really difficult, depending upon how well they corner you. And I mean, typically in this sort of fight you want to isolate one and work on it, but I actually prefer to work them all over more or less evenly, because they're very manageable when there's only 4 of them. But they do still have those invincibility frames, and once they split into 4 normal slimes, they lose that. Meaning the more of them you kill at once, moving to their 3rd phase, so to speak, the easier it is to corral them in a corner and keep them away, keep them from surrounding you, basically. And we'll see that once this fight finally ends. Oh my god, there we go. See, as opposed to the larger ones that you can't just swing your sword at madly when they close in on you, the slimes you can just corral and spam to death with your little knife. They barely even attack. In fact, it's actually easier when they do because they stop moving. Okay, now we've already hit the sea there. That slime went right over Wendell and absolutely nothing is happening to him. Just minding his own business. You know, give him a whack with your cane while we're you know, busy. Oh yeah, they drop items too, which is nice, because they can drop health refills. You get a bunch of gold from this too. There we go. Alright, this is just about done. One more. 5 more guilders, thank you. And that's the end of that. We've cleared our first boss, and we have saved Wendell from his nightmare. We'll return to the adulation of his family on the next episode of Let's Play Alundra. See you then.